Bangladesh's embattled Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, fled the country on the 5th of August 2024, after weeks of protests that have resulted in scores of deaths. Her departure is a landmark moment, but one that has left the South Asian nation facing a power vacuum into which the army, for the time being, at least, has stepped. To understand what led to the crisis in Bangladesh and what could happen next, the protests stem from long-running resentment over a quota system that saw 56% of government positions in Bangladesh reserved for various groups, including 30% for the descendants of freedom fighters who fought in the 1971 War of Independence. This quota system has proved an enormous barrier to highly coveted civil service positions for the country's large youth population, many of whom are unemployed. It had also become a subject of controversy due to how many of those quota jobs went to supporters of the ruling Awami League Party. Under immense pressure from an earlier student mobilization over the issue, Hasina abolished the entire quota system in 2018. But in June 2024, the country's High Court ruled that move illegal, sparking a fresh round of protests across the country. Then, in July, Bangladesh's public universities saw a series of walkouts by faculty and students over new pension reforms that, if implemented, would involve salary deductions. Initially, the protests were peaceful, but an incendiary speech by Hasina, in which she suggested that the students were Rajai-Kar, a term used to identify pro-Pakistan collaborators during Bangladesh's War of Independence, inflamed tensions. The Bangladesh Chhatra League, the armed wing of the Awami League, began attacking students with tear gas and live bullets, with support from the police. The Rapid Action Battalion, a controversial paramilitary group with a history of extrajudicial killings, torture and enforced disappearances, was also deployed. After a video of one of the first to be killed, a university student named Abu Saeed, circulated online, more joined the protests, leading to a further violent crackdown by police and armed groups. It is estimated that about 266 people, mostly students, were killed in the protests, including at least 32 children. The government closed schools and universities, imposed a curfew and cut internet and telecommunications. Meanwhile, student leaders were arrested and coerced to withdraw their list of demands. But this only led to the declaration of a total non-cooperation movement and a massive uprising of protesters demanding Hasina's immediate resignation. As thousands of protesters gathered for a long march to Dhaka in defiance of the curfew, the Prime Minister resigned and left the country. Is there a wider context to the political unrest? Absolutely. While attention has focused largely on the quota protests, a litany of grievances had piled up against the government. Under Hasina's rule, Bangladesh has seen GDP growth, but this has not translated into economic well-being for many Bangladeshis. Lack of opportunities, high unemployment rates among youth and soaring inflation have been ongoing sources of tension. Meanwhile, despite the Awami League espousing a zero-tolerance policy towards corruption, money laundering, bribery and nepotism scandals have dogged government ministers. And since its landslide victory in 2008, the Awami League has eroded the country's democracy. For example, in 2011 the government ended an arrangement that allowed a 90-day caretaker administration, consisting of technocrats, to organize elections and oversee transfers of power. Suppression of dissent has also grown. The harassment and detention of activists, opposition figures and human rights defenders have become more frequent. Meanwhile, there has been criminalization of any criticism of the government, including satire and social media posts. For more updates, news, views, and insights from around the world, join our communities at globalpose.com for lively discussions, in-depth reporting, and expert analysis. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Global Pose, so you won't miss out on any of our stories. Thank you for your support. You are one of a kind.